we can no longer just like rely on like a single athlete or, inspiring story to just say, oh, that's our brand, we're done. More than ever, people are interested in what do you stand for? What is like this company's mission? And being much more conscious consumers. And so I think brands need to do a better job of explaining not only just like, oh, we're inspiring you to get outside, but like, what do you stand for? What are your ethics? What are your ethos? It doesn't always just have to be the brand video as like the hero piece and that's it.
Welcome to the Backcountry Marketing Podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with Kristin Gavin. Kristin is the Director of Production at Cotopaxi. Kristin, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Thanks for taking the time to chat. I'm excited to dive into a conversation today. We're going to be talking about attention spans. We're going to be talking about this world of media in the outdoors. And I'm excited to kind of hear from you how Cotopaxi is looking at the landscape of media and either reacting or analyzing or kind of feeling out where everything is going. So not to put you on the spot, Kristin, but let's dive in. Can you kind of give us an opening statement on when you think about the world of outdoor media? What do you think? What do you think of? What do you feel? Is it exciting? Are you concerned? Kind of give us a high level statement or thoughts if you have any.
Yeah, sure. I think the single word that comes to my mind right off the bat is congested. I think that there's a lot of advertising and there's a lot of people in this space, in the outdoor space, and everybody's trying to talk over each other. And so I think it's really hard being in the outdoor space and finding your voice if you're not one of the big brands out there that already has established yourself as an outdoor company and have, the credentials and the roster of people kind of lined up. So I think it's really hard to kind of break out and stake your claim that you're a legit outdoor brand with the space that we have. And then even from a marketing standpoint, I think that there's almost too many options to advertise yourself. And I think brands can get confused of what does this look like? And I think there's lots of rinse and repeat and mimicking of what's working for other brands for your brand. And so I think it's very busy and hectic right now. And I think it's challenging for newer up and coming younger brands to kind of pave a path that works best for them in this space.
Fascinating. Do you feel like that this busyness and the hecticness, the congestedness as you used, has it always been this way, or is this a unique time that you can recall?
I feel like it's a unique time because I feel like, in the, let's say 10 years ago, in like the early teens of the 2000s, like when video became, like, social media really blew up and brand storytelling through video kind of really exploded. There were only a handful of outdoor companies that I felt like could even afford to do that and had the creative wherewithal to execute on that in a way that really made an impact. And so you saw that come to life with the North Faces, the Patagonias, the Yetis of the world, really capitalizing on that moment and kind of really paving the way for brand storytelling in the outdoor space. And I think that was really successful for those brands because there wasn't a lot of outdoor companies that were doing that. And then you get into, the late teens and the early 20s, and, you see a lot of other brands starting to try to do that as well. And then obviously COVID happens. And I think there hasn't been much change in the advertising landscape in the last 15, even 20 years of how brands are advertising themselves. There's still Instagram, there's still YouTube, there's TikTok, but that's kind of a unique platform that we could spend a whole podcast just talking about that. But I think that we're still kind of trying to do what's been done over the past 15 to 20 years. And there's just more brands now trying to do that. And so I think there's a real question of, is this still working the way that we're aligning and going out in the world from a marketing perspective? And are we showing up on the platforms that we're supposed to be showing up on in a way that is unique to our brand? Or is it kind of just more of the same? So I think that it does feel like it's more than it used to be, because there's so many more brands that are kind of like catching on and trying to do what those bigger brands have already been doing for the past, decade.
Yeah, fascinating. Okay, I'm really excited to dig into this. This is going to be interesting. Before we do, can you kind of give us a quick background on your role with Cotopaxi and what you do?
Yeah, I'm the director of production at Cotopaxi. I work really closely with the VP of creative within the creative department on the brand side. So, what that means is, I kind of oversee everything from strategy, how we're approaching campaigns, product launches from a visual perspective, how we're showing up on video and photo, and then, executing those visions from the creative team. So holding the shoots and hiring out crews and overseeing post-production and making sure, we're aligned cross-functionally within the company to make sure that everything is launching and aligned visually across all of our different platforms and departments.
So yeah, to come back to this word congested, as you and the way you talk about kind of the outdoor landscape, you make it sound like Cotopaxi. I think a lot of people would look at Cotopaxi and say, like, this is a fairly robust, maybe a newer company, but like you guys are well established. But the way you talk about this congested landscape makes it sound like Cotopaxi is still trying to feel out, like, what type of media do we produce? What is our strategy? What is our plan? Is that true? I guess that maybe is surprising to hear, because I feel like you guys are, you're real. It's not like you're in startup mode,
Yeah, and I think so. Yes, that is true. Cotopaxi has been around for 10 years, and 10 years may sound like a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not. And I think any brand has multiple stages of evolution, and Cotopaxi's in that right now. I mean, we expanded, and then we, COVID hit, and it's like, okay, wait, what are we doing? And I think I think every company has moments of expansion and then, coming down and deflating and then expanding again. And I think no matter what size of company you are, or how long you've been around, I think there's always, this question of like, wait, are we doing the right thing? Are we showing up in the right places? Is our consumer still the same as it used to be? And Cotopaxi is doing that right now. Cotopaxi is very much still diving into who our target consumer is. Who's buying Cotopaxi? Is it the person that we want it to be or that we think it is? I think Cotopaxi, our data has shown that our consumer, or, the general population, is unsure of who Cotopaxi is. Are we an outdoor company? Do we play, are we like the North Face? Are we trying to play with Arc'teryx? And the answer is no, we're not. Like, we are not a super technical brand, but we do live in the outdoor space. We are an approachable brand. We are joyful. We are for people who maybe haven't had the resources to go outside, but want to go outside. And we want to be that company, that brand that brings these people that haven't always had the opportunities to the outside and make products for them that are legit products that stand up to the elements, but maybe are more approachable from, not just a pocket side of things, but also just they look different. They don't scream that I'm like going to go climb Everest, for instance. And so I think that we are very much in the space of exploring who we are and how we show up, what our voice is. And that's very much part of kind of what my role is, and what I'm trying to focus on is how do we bring that to life visually, and how do we kind of stake a claim and make it very clear what Cotopaxi stands for.
How do you feel like that journey, how do you feel like that goal is going, trying to define visually like who Cotopaxi is?
Yeah, we are in the thick of it. I'll tell you that. Like, it is an ongoing process. I think it's good in the sense that we're having these conversations. Like, I think we need to be having these conversations internally of saying, who are we? Like in a sentence, who is Cotopaxi and what is our mission? What is our goal? There's a lot of different facets about Cotopaxi that make that answer hard, because we're not just an outdoor brand. We actually have a do-good mission. We have a foundation. We are a B Corp. We are changing the landscape of how companies can operate and still be a for-profit company. So, it's there's all this like mission side of Cotopaxi that should be communicated in addition to this outdoor technical apparel packs, product specific conversation. So how do you tell and ride the wave of both of those and make sure people know kind of what you stand for? So we're in the thick of it. I think we're making good headway on figuring out and answering some of these big questions, but it's definitely something that we're still very much shaping.
You mentioned that you feel like the outdoor world is kind of, maybe we're in a rut, and we have been for the last 10 or 15, 20 years about how we advertise. If you could describe the most, like the classic or the traditional rut that maybe we all fall into, how do you think about that? How do you describe that?
Yeah, I think when I think about that, it's kind of just like the standard deliverables of like, tell a story, an outdoor story, find somebody in the outdoors doing something active, have them go film a short story, make a few cut downs, put that on social, maybe make a few paid ads, and that's it. Like, that's your campaign. I feel like that's the rut that a lot of brands fall into, of like, tell one brand story that shows somebody doing something active in our product, and we kind of leave it at that and try to put some paid money behind it and some ads. I'm an avid outdoors person as well. I'm in this space. I live it. I breathe it. It's one of the reasons why I like working in it, because I feel like I am a target consumer. I'm consuming this type of media as well from all of the brands, and like it just gets old from a consumer standpoint. It's like you can only watch so many people in the outdoors doing cool things, riding cool mountain bikes, climbing cool climbs, jumping off peaks. Like, it's kind of like, at this point, I feel like, almost every story's kind of been told just one way or the other, where I feel like that's the rut that we're in, is finding unique stories, but not only finding unique stories, but telling them in a unique way. And I feel like right now, what's really making me stop scrolling from a consumer standpoint is like the execution of that story. So we're talking about like how a video is edited, the music that they do, the editing style. Like, I feel like we can't just like be subpar with the way that we're producing content. It needs to like truly be unique, from everything from the production to all the way through editing, to make somebody stop scrolling. But then also thinking about like, how are new ways that we can show up, print, or, are there other ways that we could be using social media or paid or PR? Like, are there other ways, touch points that we could get to consumers that, we as the outdoor company or brands haven't really paid a lot of attention to in the last, decade?
Okay, I'm going to give you kind of an interesting question. If I say the word brand storytelling, what's the first word that pops into your head?
Yeti.
Okay. Let me clarify my question. If I say the word brand storytelling, what's the first emotional response or reaction? Not necessarily a brand associated, but does it excite you? Are you like, oh, guys, we've been here before?
I do get excited. I mean, being a producer, like, as much as I can talk about like that brand storytelling is in a rut and we should be looking at other things, like, at the end of the day, I'm also consider myself a creative, and I love producing brand stories, and I love shooting beautiful films and telling people's stories. And, the human experience is inherently storied. And so I think it's in our nature to tell stories, and I think that we should continue doing that. So I think my first reaction to your question is excited. It's always something that I'm pitching, is that we should be telling stories. But I also think paralleled with the excitement is this daunting feeling of like, how can we do this in a way that is not just adding to the junk mail of like everybody's social feeds, you know, like we don't want to just like, how can we stand out? Like, unless this is going to be really good, then, you know, we shouldn't pursue it.
Interesting. I love that filter. And I think it's a worthy question to ask. Like, is brand storytelling, is it still viable? Like, does it work? Or is it just, have we just kind of fallen into this trap of producing, as you said, like the same stories over and over and over again? But it sounds like there's still some part of you that feels like it has potential, but maybe we just need to really clarify like what is worthy of. Worthy sounds too pretentious. Like, everyone's story is important, but like what really makes the cut?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's what really makes the cut, but I also think it's like a larger question of like, what is the whole plan? Like, what is the strategy here? What is like the entire content plan? Like, it's obviously not just a video. I think Cotopaxi's done a good job in, you know, we have this mission part of our company, and, you know, along with videos that we're putting out, we usually have a follow-up article or blog post on our impact side of our website that further dives into an issue or something that we're solving or how we're helping people in this area. And so what I think we could get better at is telling more of that story and pushing people to those pages more. And so, you know, I think there needs to be like, the video is just the tip of the iceberg for the rest of the content that needs to be telling a larger story. I don't think we can no longer just like rely on like a single athlete or, you know, inspiring story to just say, oh, that's our brand, we're done. I think more than ever, people are interested in, what do you stand for? What is like this company's mission? What is your footprint on the world? And being much more conscious consumers. And so I think brands need to do a better job of explaining not only just like, oh, we're inspiring you to get outside, but like, what do you stand for? What are your ethics? What are your ethos? And how is that coming to life in all these different facets of this campaign? So I think that there just needs to be more emphasis on the supporting you know, deliverables for any like one brand video, for instance. And it doesn't always just have to be the brand video as like the hero piece and that's it.
Yeah. So kind of walk us through how that works internally. And I guess if we're going to pick on Cotopaxi, like you're saying, you know, we need to have more strategy and more of a robust plan around these pieces that if we are going to tell the story, then like we got to do it right. Like, how does that work inside the company? How do you build internal support around these stories? Because you might look at a story and say, oh, team, this is amazing. We need to like get behind this. But what does that actually look like? Because I think maybe from the outside, folks might not really understand what that takes to rally an internal team. Maybe it's easier than I'm alluding to, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, it's not easy. I think it's a hodgepodge of different things. So, you know, using Cotopaxi as an example, like Cotopaxi is quite small. Like our teams are very small. So yes, we do have like an in-house, you know, small creative team, very small production team. But we by and large partner with outside agencies, outside production companies. And so there is a mixture of like our internal team, our internal creative team, and myself kind of pitching, this is what we should create. These are the stories we should tell. And this is maybe the way we believe it should show up. But me as the director of production, like I more and more want to partner with production companies or even an agency on a project and say, what are your thoughts? How should we be showing up in different areas besides Instagram, besides just a video? Where should we be showing up on paid in an interesting way? Is print interesting? How is print interesting? What should we be doing there? And trying to get some bigger, broader buy-in and eyeballs from like a creative standpoint. I think if you have really good creative concepts that, you know, have some data to back it up of like, you know, this is a good idea because that is what's going to make everybody go, oh, okay, that's exciting. And I think right now we struggle to find that. Like I have struggled to find that in a production company or even an agency to say, pitch me on this and pitch me like how you think we should show up and what those assets might look like. I think more and more I find that production companies or agencies are looking to be told what they need to create and then just saying this is what it looks like versus like pitching us a great idea and saying this is how we think you should show up and why.
Interesting. So would you prefer that you were approached and given ideas and distribution plans? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful. And then I think our team, you know, given that we're so small, I think then we can kind of like react and then adjust and have a conversation about what makes sense. But, you know, brands have a lot going on, and like creative teams within brands are oftentimes working on multiple things at once from a creative execution standpoint. And so we don't always have the bandwidth to be like super focused on like one campaign or one product launch. And I think that's why, you know, we partner with outside agencies to kind of help give more brain juice to these ideas, because we don't necessarily have the time or the bandwidth to do that ourselves. And so as much as I would love to kind of completely own some of that stuff, I think it's good to ask for help and like get outside ideas of like what this could look like in order for us to stay fresh and relevant too, from like a visual standpoint. So we're not always kind of doing the same thing.
You don't have to divulge any secrets or $1 million ideas, but I guess you could if you wanted to. But what are we overlooking in this outdoor media marketing world? Like, you know, I feel like brand storytelling was kind of like this, I don't know, this like interesting, unique approach a while ago, right? What's like the next thing? Is there a next thing? Have you talked to people? Do you have any insights or conversations that you feel like if you could look at a crystal ball and predict where this all goes and kind of like what the next new fun format is there something else out there? Or as you said before we started recording, like have we kind of arrived at the summit of media possibilities?
Yeah, I think to your first question of like, have we missed something? I do think that when agencies and even production companies pitch ideas, they're often missing what the ROI is. Like it's usually like, it seems very self-serving. It's like, oh, I want to go to this location and shoot this thing and it's going to be gorgeous and it's going to look this way and it's going to be beautiful. And like, you know, Cotopaxi could be part of this, or whatever brand, it can be part of this. And yes, it's visually stunning, but why do you think that would be successful? What do you think we need to do to make that successful? Like, where do we show up, you know, from like a media plan or, you know, and I'm not saying that production companies or agencies need to have a media planner or anything, but I think what we're missing is content creators not understanding the platforms in which content shows up. I think what I am always striving to find is a director or, you know, they have an editor that says, hey, I know, let's just say Instagram like the back of my hand. I know the algorithms. I know the editing style. I know what we need to do to capture people's minds, attentions, and hearts on this like fast-paced platform. This is why, like, you have the portfolio, you have the data, the results from previous projects to show like that there's ROI, there's outcome. And I think that we're missing that. Like people who are not only masters of their craft, but I think part of that craft needs to be like, where does that content live, and really understanding that platform and saying, I know what we need to do to make this work on Instagram or your website or print. Like if you have made amazing print, you know, catalogs or direct mailers or whatever it is that really stand out, like I think that's what we're missing, are people who not only are like great at capturing the content, but also really educated and informed about the ever-changing landscape of all the varied platforms that it may stand out on. So I think that's kind of like where we're missing something. As far as like what the next thing is, I think that like it's part of that. I think it's like we have all these platforms. We have these social media platforms. we have all these great sites and, ways to reach consumers like we've never reached them before. We have AI that's creating super personalized custom content for people, and that's only going to expand and get more relevant as we proceed. And I think that where the next big thing is going to be, how do we create really unique content on these platforms that is different than what we've done before? Like, versus being like, oh, it's a 2-minute video with a 30-second cut down. It's like, well, no, like, what if we splice that differently? What if it was different? What if you went somewhere to a different page and it was like tons of different content and a really like interactive website that people like wanted to scroll through, and it told a bigger story and it had all these interactive components? Like, people want more personalized, tailored content. And I think the next big thing will be, how do we leverage some of like the AI capabilities, these, social media platforms, to create really fun and engaging content that is more than just a video. It's a mixture of everything. It's copy, it's video, it's photography. And I think that's the next thing. I think that's what we're going to start seeing is like, more digital experiences coming to life.
Interesting. Do you feel like, so this is something I think about, like someone said this on the podcast a while ago. They said, we live in a world that's hyper connected, yet we're also disconnected at the same time. And it seems like while that's disappointing and sad and maybe a reflection on society, it also seems like an opportunity for brands to, I don't want to say replace the need of like family and friends and like wholesome relationships, but to play a piece in filling that need. And as you're talking, I'm thinking there's this need out there. What if a brand could fill a part of that through a really fascinating story or a really fascinating digital experience? And maybe it's coupled with this great cause or this great foundation project. That seems like a very cohesive, well thought out, like top, middle, and bottom of the funnel project. I mean, what gets in the way of pulling something like that off? I guess off the top of my head, I could think about, well, you got to have an interesting story that's actually really, really good. You got to have an internal team that's rallying together to pull this off. What else am I missing?
Budget, of course, is always the point. Like, making sure that you have the money to show up in all those different ways. I think events can be incredibly powerful. And I think events are a great way for brands to really put their money where their mouth is and like be on the ground and be like, we're here, we're showing up. We're not just like writing a check. We're putting in the time and the effort. And, because of social media, like, we are able to connect with the consumer in a way that we weren't able to before social media. You can actually write in the comments and respond to people that are talking with your brand. And people love that. People love believing that they are talking with a brand, that they have some influence, some connection, and they're hearing back and having a conversation. And I think when, to put that a step further, like, let's do it in person, let's show up at events, let's hold events. And I think that can be incredibly powerful of like bringing people together in person. And I think that's why, film festivals are a great way to do that. But I think even outside of that is like showing up and doing that as well. So yeah, I think it's like, a whole environment and ecosystem that needs to happen for like larger brand storytelling to like say, this is who we are. And I think, doing things that are in person and showing up in a unique way digitally is the way to do that for sure.
You mentioned that word connection, and I wonder if that's kind of the future. We're all seeking connection, and I think the intention with the stories that brands have told is to build a connection with their audience. But maybe what we move into and what we see ourselves transitioning into is ways to build that connection even stronger and maybe deeper, and in a way that cuts through all the congestion that's out there. Does that word strike you as being important in whatever you see as this future?
Yeah, I totally think so. And I think that is a main goal of Cotopaxi is like to build that connection. We want people to resonate with our do good mission, with our, you know, our foundation and like what we're trying to do on a larger scale globally. And I think through that, that's our into creating that connection and that like brand love, to continue to like, you know, purchase from Cotopaxi or donate to Cotopaxi. So yeah, I think connection's everything. I think connection to the brand, connection to the ethos, connection to each other, is what will, you know, ultimately make a brand live.
If you, let's say in 3 years, you and I were having a follow-up conversation and everything, you could envision this perfect reality where everything at Cotopaxi was working beautifully. And you guys have figured out this amazing way to build connection with your customers. And you've figured out how to find and tell these amazing stories that have all these ways to connect and tie the brand and the foundation together. I'd be curious if you could describe in as much detail, like, what does that future look like? And what are some of the like key pillars that you think are necessary for that state to be possible?
That is a big question. I think ideally what that looks like is that people have a clear understanding of who Cotopaxi is, that we are telling a very clear and concise story, brand story of who we are, what our mission is, and what we sell. You know, I think the pillars to make that happen are, you know, we need to be louder about our mission statement. We need to be louder about the do good part of our company. Like, people by and large don't know what Cotopaxi does on that end, and what we're doing to alleviate poverty in, you know, Latin countries. And so I think we need to spend the time and the money to tell that story louder and build up that knowledge from a customer standpoint. And I also think we are, you know, always improving our product. We're just getting better. Packs, apparel, I think we need to, you know, focus on, instead of expanding those lines, just making the line really, really good. So less is more kind of approach. And so I think it'd be better to go out with like a smaller assortment of apparel, for example, but have it be really, really good apparel that fits really well, performs exceptionally well. And so in my ideal world, we would have, you know, we would have assets, top funnel assets that clearly define what our mission is. We would have great product improvements and a solid product line. And we would be focusing on, you know, pushing the boundaries of brand marketing. So I think Cotopaxi is one of those brands that really is just kind of starting to tap into some of like the brand storytelling and some of these things that brands have been doing for a long time. And it feels really fresh to Cotopaxi because they haven't really done that. We haven't really like found an athlete or that person that's like has a great story and we're telling this amazing brand story with them. I mean, it's happened in different ways. We've told a few stories, but it hasn't shown up in a large capacity from like a brand awareness standpoint. And I think we might be better off served, you know, skipping that stepping stone that a lot of brands are doing and saying, what is the next thing? What makes sense for Cotopaxi? Where do we stand? Do we just move on? And what is that next thing for us? How can we show up in a unique way for us? Because I would say our audience is unique, and we should be, you know, showing up in a different way to meet the audience needs and kind of where they are at. So meeting them at, you know, I don't think that the average consumer for Cotopaxi is the same as it is for the North Face, for instance. So I think that's my dream world, is that we would feel confident in the shoes that we're standing in and the brand story that we're saying, and we can confidently market who we are and know where to show up and win.
Do you feel like a lack of connection in just marketing in general, does that lead to a congested marketing landscape? Is that why there's so much congestion out there?
Sorry, say the first part of the question again.
Yeah, I feel like a lack of connection between brands and their audience is what has led to all of the congestion. Maybe we aren't sure who our audience is, or maybe we aren't sure what our audience wants to hear from us. And so we just put stuff out into the world, hoping that some of it sticks, some of it resonates, and that's what contributes to the volume. Or is there, or is that not true? Is there not a connection there?
I don't know if I fully believe that. I mean, I think no doubt brands can always be doing a better job about continually looking into who their target customer is and where they're showing up. I think it stems more from brands and the people within those brands being hyper focused on competition and wanting to be other brands. I think it's like people, even like me saying, wow, Patagonia is killing it. We need to be like Patagonia. What's Patagonia doing? Let's do what Patagonia is doing. Versus saying Patagonia is killing it. How did they get to that point where they're killing it? Like what makes them successful and why? And how can we maybe look through the lens of how we might believe they did? Like, what's our hypothesis of how they decided to come to that, marketing strategy? And how can we maybe look at our situation through a lens like that and come up with something unique for our brand? I feel like people are inspired by what other brands are doing and set out to go do what they're doing. And I think that's why we see so much kind of rinse and repeat with content, is because there's no, pull or direction or new ideas coming in that are really saying to do otherwise.
I think about that from like a team perspective or a team dynamic. Like what leads to a lack of fresh ideas in an organization? Is it because we're all it's the same people year after year who are just contributing the same ideas? Are we not looking outside of our industry for other inspiration? Are we not bringing different people into the fold to kind of shake up what's happening? Maybe it's a combination of those. Is there anything that sticks out to you?
I think it's a combination of all of them. I think the one thing that you didn't mention is like time. Like, I feel like it takes a lot of time and to really curate a strategy, to curate a plan, and things are moving fast all the time. And especially when you have a small team like I do at Cotopaxi, like, we don't have the luxury of time to spend 6 months ideating around one singular campaign. And so I think that's probably the number one problem, is that like getting truly creative and innovative takes a lot of time. And I don't think that, brand teams always have the luxury of that, and putting the time towards like thinking really outside the box. So I think that's one. I also think because of COVID, like a lot of the outdoor companies are just kind of like in a precarious situation. Like, we're not necessarily willing to take a chance on something new because there isn't proof that will work. Like, is it the gamble that we want to play right now? Like right now, a lot of companies are playing it safe and are trying to do things that are tried and true, feel safe, things like other brands have done this. It's easier to get approval, on things that have been done and tested before. So I think that's another aspect that's really hard about being truly innovative and proposing something outside of the box. And then, the idea of like, yes, working with people outside of the industry. I think hearing from different voices, like I think it is important to be working with people who know the space, know the outdoor space and where you want to show up. But hearing from different voices, women, people of color, different backgrounds, I think is a huge thing that luckily the outdoor area have really started to do a lot better job of, and making those voices heard and telling those stories. So I do think that that is improving, but is something we could always work upon, is like, having other people that maybe haven't always had a voice in the outdoor industry, giving them a voice.
On the last episode we had on the show was with Kevin Knudsen. He's a art director at Eddie Bauer, and we talked a lot about the idea that you just mentioned, which is brands are, especially in today's age, like we're kind of playing it safe, and that lack of risk leads to everyone kind of rushing to the middle of the media landscape. And if folks want to dig more into that episode, I'd highly recommend you go check it out, because it's really interesting. But he's talking to what you're mentioning here, which is like, if we're all playing it safe and we're not taking risks, then we're all just rinsing and repeating everything that's been done before, which I think is an easy position to take when you're on a podcast and you kind of want to like have a bit of a soapbox and say, oh, come on guys, like let's do better. But I think it's interesting to hear from your perspective, like, of what it actually takes to do these things internally. Like, it takes a lot of work. It takes a ton of time. It takes a lot of resources, and it's easy to maybe say, but it's much harder to actually do.
Yeah, it is a lot harder to do. And I think it's a lot harder to find those people that want to have a voice, that want to have a say, and align with the company, align with what you're trying to do. So there's just so many different boxes that, we're always trying to check to make sure that we are going about it the right way and like telling the right stories from the right people in the right way. So yeah, it's definitely complex.
So as you think about where the industry is going, kind of wrapping things up here, I mean, what are your thoughts? You sound optimistic. You sound excited about where things are going, albeit maybe a slightly cautious and aware of the responsibility that it would take to actually move in that direction. You have any final thoughts or any lasting thoughts for the audience?
Yeah, I think we're on like the precipice of an explosion of like new content coming out. I mean, I think AI is already changing the landscape of marketing and content creation. And I think in the next 5 years, even, we're going to see a complete like change and overhaul of how brands and marketers come to the table and create content for their audiences. And so it feels daunting, but it's also exciting to be part of that. I'm excited for more like multimedia experiences. I'm excited that in our internal discussions, we're talking about print again, and like, how can we make that exciting? And I think, viewers are just like with clothing, fads happen with marketing. I think print kind of died as, digital media kind of exploded. And now I feel like there is this want or this nostalgia for print in a cool way. And I think that's exciting again. I feel like there's constantly new opportunities of kind of coming at things that were once old and making them new again. And I kind of feel like we're while AI is something new, I feel like there's also these old things that are kind of getting reinvented in a new way. And so I guess, my final thoughts are, keep creating and thinking and educating yourselves on platforms and how things are being successful and where things are going. And, it's not just about getting the beautiful shot, but it's about how that shot shows up and comes to life across an entire campaign. I just think that we're in a great area to kind of push the envelope. And, I think brands are going to be the ones to say, this is how we should market. And hopefully we can be proactive in that versus like reactive to where social media and content goes. So my hope is that, all outdoor brands can kind of take the reins and steer the ship of like where brands show up and kind of own that space.
Okay, one final question for you. If you could share with us one conviction that you have, that you believe with 100% about this world of media and marketing, and then share one question that you would love to have answered for yourself. We'll end it there.
I think my one conviction would be that people love to feel connection with brands. People want connection. They want brands to align with their interests, their hobbies, their ethics, their ethos. And I think people feel really proud when they purchase from companies who achieve and mark all those boxes for them. I think people feel pride in wearing product from companies that align with all of those, personal thoughts, feelings, convictions. So I think that would be my thing that I feel is 100% true.
Mm-hmm.
Question for myself. Is it for myself or for the industry?
Either or.
Gosh, I don't know. I guess my question is, maybe for the industry of where, what is our main goal in being in the outdoor space? Is it to get people in the outdoors, new people in the outdoors, or is it to, enhance consumerism? Is kind of my big question. And I think, I know what the answer to that is, but I think that would be the answer that I would always put to any company. And I think if every company asked that, it would be interesting to see how that would change their marketing.
Yeah, fascinating. Well, Kristin, thank you for sharing the time. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I don't have an answer to your question, but I'll think about it and let you know if I come up with anything.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Have a good day.
You too.